Did you know that in Oklahoma, full coverage isn't actually an insurance coverage that you can get? In fact, if you scroll through your list of coverages on your auto policy, it's nowhere to be found. It's just not there. Now we can get a little bit more into what that means a little later on in this talk, but for now, my name is Landon Johnson. I'm a full-time licensed insurance producer at Thomas Weber State Farm Agency in Edmond, Oklahoma. It's also my job and my fiducial responsibility to make sure that my clients understand their coverage, what it means, and what they're covered for. Unfortunately, a lot of insurance companies do a very poor job at making sure people know what their coverage is. And it's unfortunate, but most Americans just don't understand insurance in general. This leads to a lot of big financial losses in a lot of families that can actually ruin their lives, essentially. And I don't want that to be my clients. So instead, I make it my business to make sure that they have the proper coverage. State Farm in general makes it their business to ensure that they have proper coverage. Now in this talk, I'm going to be talking specifically about auto policies and what is covered, what can be covered under an auto policy. And it's going to be a brief summary. I would urge you, if you have any other questions or don't understand something, to seek out an actual professional. But for the most part, I'm going to give a brief overview of exactly what can be covered. Firstly, though, a little bit about my company in general. State Farm, according to the Insurance Insider US, is the #1 property and casualty producer in the US. This means that in terms of premiums and policies sold, we lead in both auto and fire policies. Fire being your homeowners, renters, boat policies, things like that. Now, according to the Motley Fool, and this is just general knowledge, State Farm is a mutual company. This is important because it means that State Farm doesn't have shareholders to pay out to. They have policy owners, which is our clients. So whenever our clients file a claim, we're paying out to the owners of State Farm, essentially. And that's important because it lets you know that State Farm, and myself included, is a company and a producer that wants people to understand their coverage more so than anything. Because whenever people understand their coverage, they make better decisions, which makes the risk safer for State Farm in general. Now, the first thing I wanted to go over with you is the big things that are covered by insurance. Now, these are state laws that it's a state law that you have to be covered by liability insurance whenever you're driving. That goes for anybody on the road in a car. Liability insurance, of course, covers the other person in case you cause a wreck. It only goes into effect if you cause a wreck, and it covers the other person. Now, there are a few numbers to know here. There's 3 numbers to know here. It's your bodily injury coverage per person, your bodily injury coverage per accident, and your property damage coverage. Now, the state minimums, according to the Department of Insurance, is 25, 50, 25. Now, what this means is that it'll cover up to $25,000 of bodily injury per person, $50,000 per accident, and then $25,000 of property damage per accident. Now, this isn't a whole lot of coverage whenever you consider that most cars on the road nowadays can easily be worth $25,000, and medical expenses can get way more than $25,000 as well, especially if they take things like ambulance rides. Now, it's important that people understand this. It is the only thing that is state required. It is completely required by Oklahoma that you have liability coverage, at least on your auto policy. But the 2 other big things are comp and collision. And most of the time, whenever you finance a car, your bank will tell you that full coverage is required. What they really mean is comprehensive and collision coverage. Now, what these are actually kind of self-explanatory. Collision, of course, is anything that you hit. whether it be another vehicle, somebody's property, anything like that. And comprehensive are essentially going to be things like acts of God or vandalism or theft. Now, these two come with a deductible that you have to pay, that you get to choose from a list of options. And once you pay that deductible out of pocket, insurance will cover the rest, no matter what the amount is. Up to, of course, the market value of the vehicle or the current worth of the vehicle. Now, there are a few more smaller coverages to go over, and some of these include rental car coverage, uninsured motorist, roadside assistance, and MedPay, or personal injury, as you might see it. Now, the most important of these smaller coverages, which are all pretty self-explanatory, the most important, though, is uninsured motorist. Now, most people don't understand what uninsured motorist really covers against, and really what it should be called is uninsured or underinsured motorist, right? So it's for whenever you get into an accident and it's the other person's fault, but they don't have enough insurance, or they don't have insurance at all, right, to cover the accident. Now, uninsured motorist, unfortunately, in the state of Oklahoma, only covers bodily injury. It will only cover your medical expenses. And so if you do the math on that, basically, if you have fairly decent health insurance, you might as well use that instead of trying to use the bodily or the uninsured motorist coverage. It costs a lot in Oklahoma, and honestly, it's just kind of not worth it. So we at State Farm never, at least at Thomas Weber State Farm, will never really advise anybody to have uninsured motorist if they have good coverage through health insurance. Now, the rest of the smaller things you can kind of get the gist of just by their names. You have MedPay, which is medical payments, rental car, which gives you a rental car in the case of an accident and your vehicle's unavailable, and then roadside assistance, which is just a tow truck service in case your car breaks down. Now, far too many people find themselves at major losses when they don't understand their coverage, or they simply want it lower for the better prices. But in the long run, 80% of people, according to Jacklish Law Group, will experience at least one auto accident in their lifetime. That means that it's worthwhile to pay the slightly more coverage, the slightly higher premium for the better coverage. I don't want that to be your future, and don't let your future be impacted by your poor coverage. Now, if you don't understand your coverage, ask an expert from your local State Farm agency, or from any expert that you happen to know in general, just to learn. And remember, it's better to pay for the coverage you need than the car that you wrecked.